Hi, I'm Jeff Pagliano, and the PAD taught me how storytelling can change people's lives.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the PAD podcast. My name is Rob Morgan. I teach set design in the Performing Arts Department at Washington University in St. Louis. And we are on episode 30. Can't believe we've done 30 episodes of this. Episode 30. My guest is the amazing Jeff Pagliano. Jeff is an actor, writer, and facilitator who specializes in interactive and immersive theater. He has designed learning experiences on leadership development and workplace culture and delivered team building workshops for corporate clients around the world. A proud member of Actors Equity, Jeff has also appeared as an actor in regional and New York theater productions. He started his career in the film industry, working on the feature films Contact and Deep Impact, and in the office of legendary director Robert Zemeckis. Jeff is a founding member, as we'll talk about, of Mama's Pot Roast, a co-founder of Mama's Pot Roast. Also worked on a very early production of All Student Theater's Chess. He directed Chess. He got a history degree, and he is currently a grad student at Emerson College in Applied Theater. I am just so excited to bring you this episode of my interview with Jeff Pagliano. Enjoy. All right, my guest today on the PAD podcast is Jeff Pagliano. Welcome to the podcast, Jeff. I'm very, very excited to have you.
Hi, Rob. Thanks so much for having me. I'm glad to join the crew that has been a part of this.
I gotta say, your name has come up so many times when interviewing previous guests, and as these interviews go along, a little bit behind the scenes, I try to make notes to myself of like, oh, there's a name I should look up. There's a name I should look up, and see if they're interested. And your name just kept coming up over and over again. So I would. Before we even talk about your history here in the WashU PAD program here, I think there's a lot of crossover where alums will credit you and their relationship to you. Really, honestly, it's folks have kind of given you a shout out. So I'm excited to kind of meet the man, the myth, the legend, Jeff Pagliano. So.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. No, and it's been great to listen to the podcast because it's been a great trip down memory lane. Everyone from Sanjit De Silva and Corey Jones and Ben Winters and Adrian Levy, all of those people were huge parts of my experience at WashU and really contributed to what a fantastic experience being a part of the PAD was. So I am happy to talk about them, and I'm grateful
Nice.
that they acknowledged me as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. And there's been a few times where, as a thank you, and I'll try to find yours, I try to find your handprint on the wall and send you a picture
Oh,
of that.
I think that might have been
Oh,
before.
perhaps
That
you're
might have happened after
pre-handprint.
my time. I might be pre-handprint, but yeah, we can move
Um,
on.
you're a PH, pre-handprint here.
Yes, yes.
But if you could tell us a little bit about just how you landed here at WashU and how you came to become a history major and a theater and Italian minor here at WashU.
Yeah. So I grew up outside of Washington, D.C., and did some theater in high school. I actually got my start as a boy soprano in opera. I sang in an
Nice.
opera with Placido Domingo, not to drop a name,
Whoa.
at the Washington Opera. And so theater and performance was always a part of what I did. And then also in high school, I just really developed an interest in history. Part of it is growing up in DC, but I had a fantastic AP US history teacher. And so when I was looking at schools, I knew I wanted to do both. I didn't really want to do a conservatory, but I also knew I couldn't just do history or humanity or something like that without that creativity. And WashU kind of ticked all those boxes. Also, when I was applying to school, my parents kept saying, "Oh, I know someone there. I know someone there." But they said, "We don't know anyone in St. Louis." And I thought, okay, that's for me. So I'm definitely going to go there.
That was a feature, not a bug. That no, they
That
don't know
was
what
a
it was.
that was a feature, not a bug. Exactly. Exactly.
Nice, nice. So did you essentially just find WashU, or did WashU find you? We hear from a lot of guests on the podcast that maybe you got some marketing materials, or you just went and sought out our program here.
I just sought it out. I think a
Yeah.
friend of mine had applied and thought, hey, you should take a look at this school. I actually didn't visit WashU until I was stepping on campus for the
Wow.
first time before my first day. I suffered an injury when I was a senior in high school and I just couldn't
Oh wow.
travel. And so it was kind of this big risk, but I remember going the night before and first of all being completely enamored of Brookings. I mean, how do you beat that
Yeah.
view?
Yeah.
And then just something felt right. And then within a week, it's what I have a daughter now who's also applying to college, and they keep saying when they know, they know. And it was exactly
Yeah.
that for me. exactly that for
Nice.
me.
That makes
Yeah.
sense. Yeah. And I've heard a lot of students say the same thing about, just once they set foot on campus, it's sort of the textbook definition of university. Like
Yeah.
it's
Oh, yeah.
its own
Yeah.
little world here and in a really lovely way. Well, that's great. So you began here. Were you undecided in the early days of being here, or did you honestly know, like you said, had a sort of a real emphasis in history?
No, it was going to be a history major kind of from the
Gotcha.
beginning, but I auditioned for the first main stage show, As You
Oh,
Like It,
nice.
and I was cast as, I don't know, one of the lords who was exiled to the forest. But it was actually through that where I kind of got my introduction to the PAD and thought, actually, this is more than just something extracurricular to do, kind of fun on the side. This
Yeah.
is something that could really challenge me and could feed my creativity. And really, at that time, it wasn't just the theater, it was also the history program. There was a real sense of creativity and storytelling kind of woven through really all of the classes that I took. So to me, the PAD and my involvement in the shows felt like part of the fabric of the university at the time.
Nice, nice. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I've seen photos of that As You Like It. That Mike Louie, if I'm not mistaken, former technical director here, might have designed that one, if I'm not mistaken, before my
Oh,
time.
yes.
But very, very interesting. So, and Anna Pileggi, as I told you before we started recording, I mentioned you literally just yesterday, and she said, "Oh, please tell him hello for me." And she said, while you were here, you all took a show, and she's going to kill me because I can't remember the name of the show. You took a show to Seattle.
We did, yeah. And it's funny because Pileggi only started the year before I did, so we
Wow.
go
Okay.
way, way back. I
Sure.
took an acting one class from her my freshman year, and she was just a force of nature. I did listen to the podcast you did with her, and you talk about her laugh. It's something I can still hear, and there's nothing better than making Anna Pileggi laugh. I just want to say that. But we did this show called Bad Blood,
Mhm.
which is a show set in Chile, I think, was the playwright. And everyone wanted to do it because it was traveling to Seattle. I don't think they'd ever done that before. And to me, it was my first real taste of what it feels like to be in a professional show and have that experience of traveling. So we did it for a couple of weeks at the Black Box Theater and then went to Seattle for 10 days, did four performances there.
Wow.
And it changed my life because I was able to see how the run in one place can feed a run in another place and how the
Hmm.
audiences are different. And we did it in a couple different venues over in Seattle.
Wow.
So it was great. And there was a period of time where was doing a lot of traveling with PAD related things. So I was also in Mama's Pot Roast, which I
Oh,
think, don't know if
yes.
that's still going on, but
Oh, it absolutely is. Yes.
yeah, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So they had this thing called the National Comedy College Festival that was at Skidmore College, and so Pot Roast wanted to be a part of it, and the university helped fund that and helped make it possible. And so it was just this great era of going on the road and taking these shows and really kind of seeing what audiences beyond student audiences are really like.
Oh, that's amazing. And it really kind of blows your mind when you're able to travel with a production and sort of, in a sense, sort of try on that jacket of being a professional actor, right? And going show to show and city to city. And I know you've done some of that. I've done some of that as a
Yeah,
designer. It's it kind of, in a sense, I maybe it you agree, it kind of validates what you're doing. You feel like, this different venue is going to change the show, but it's also going to expose this audience to something that I think is important.
yeah. And in the sense of Pot Roast, so Pot Roast, I was one of the founding members of Pot Roast.
Wow. Yeah.
And it was actually started by Nick Tamarkin and Michael Holmes.
Yeah.
And so we had done this, and founders include Peter Sarsgaard was in it, Shel Parkins, Amy Handler, Alexis Shamau, Ryan Patterson, this great group. And we had gotten a good response from the WashU community, but then to be able to take it to Skidmore, the National Comedy College Festival, to kind of see how the way we worked stacked up to the way other folks worked was also really, really good because I think one of the things about the university is it can be very insular and you don't really know how the work you're doing
Right.
is going to be received. So when you go to Seattle or you go to the National Comedy College Festival, it really does give you a chance to say, okay, here's what I'm doing in relation to what else is going on. It was hugely helpful.
Oh, nice, nice. I make the analogy often with students about the boat. The boat that you're in at WashU is a different boat that you're in when you're, comparing your talents, your expertise in an area, when the boat is a much larger one, including multiple universities and multiple groups that are, co-presenting together. But that sounds like an amazing learning experience. One of my I teach a creativity class. One of my four undergraduate TAs is in Mama's Pot Roast.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Uh,
I'm so glad to know that it's still going all these years later.
it is, and we have 80 students in that class, all first year students, 80 students. There's four undergraduate TAs, and he knows that he has his name's R.A. Robinson. Shout out to R.A. He knows he has a captive audience, so he's always pitching the shows that they're doing. He's like, if you got
Oh,
Friday night, come see my show, and so it's too bad I haven't seen him in Mama's Pot Roast, but he takes great pride in the work he does there, and he's just
great,
a remarkable young man.
great.
So yeah.
Yeah, there was
So
just that time at WashU. I just say that, there was so much things like that. Like Pot Roast started. We did all student theater, which is where we would do, I don't know if that's still around. We would do shows
yes,
in the quad. All of that stuff kind of started around that time. And I just remember it being what you just talked about, a hub of creativity, where if you came and you had an idea, the university and the PAD would say, yep, go ahead, try it out, see how it works. And so
nice,
to know
nice.
that that ethos is still going strong is great.
Wow. I'd be curious to know, and I don't want to jump too far ahead, but I'd be curious to know how your background in history and your drama background have kind of perhaps complemented each other.
I think it's so funny that you asked that. I was thinking about it. My history major taught me what makes a story compelling.
Hmm.
And I use this analogy that there's this great American filmmaker, John Sayles, and I discovered John Sayles through Ivor Bernstein's history class at WashU when he was trying to teach us about unionization and the miners' strike. And
Hmm.
so the idea that narrative and storytelling could help illuminate large trends is something that I have taken with me. So I directed for All Student Theater, I directed a production of Chess. And
Hmm.
I knew that I didn't know much about chess. I just knew I liked the music. I knew I needed to do my homework
Yeah.
and I needed to understand the context that the show was in. And it's that history major that helped me with those research skills. And more importantly, helped me understand what's the story that is going to resonate just for the audience, not just for the audiences, but also how are we going to set chess in a larger context in the arc of the Cold War, USSR US relations. And
Yep.
so that really is how the history major informed that.
Ah, it's so interesting. Yeah, we not too long ago, but Henry Schway was still here because he directed it. We did Angels in America, and
Mhm.
I'm someone that's old enough to have lived through, the AIDS epidemic and early 90s. I had a dear sort of, shall I say, mentor of mine who was a designer who passed very quickly of AIDS. And so it was, for me, a very profound period of time. And I found myself here at WashU attempting as best I could to represent that period in history because students
Yeah.
just had no context. They didn't, to an extent, they were shocked to find out that people were in the closet at all, and that that it was shameful to be considered gay. And it was for me a real wake up call for myself to say, well, hey, this is to me not that distant a past, and yet for these students, it could be a different century.
Yeah. And it's all woven together because I think Angels of America is extraordinary work. And even for someone like me who does remember a little bit of that time, it doesn't help you understand what it felt like to be a
Yeah,
part of that time. And that's what theater can do. You feel what it must have been like to live through that time. And it teaches you about a historical event that if you were only to read about it in books and not to take anything away from historical fiction or historical novels, you don't get that same visceral sense unless you balance both the history and the theater and the storytelling.
yeah. Amen. Amen to that. So it sounds like you were both extracurricularly and then curricularly involved in drama and of course history and I don't want to overlook Italian. uh,
My Italian minor. I will just say, and Michael Scherberg was my professor, and I will just say my enthusiasm for the language didn't match my aptitude in the language, but I did. I know that Adrian talked about the trip to Italy that
yeah.
we took. That again was this amazing opportunity to immerse myself in a different culture, and we saw on my birthday a production of Our Town in Italian in
Wow.
this opera theater in downtown Arezzo. And again, it's just one of those experiences that completely blew my mind and again helped me understand what the potential for theater is and how it really is a global art form that looks different, but is all about that communal experience of telling a story.
Absolutely. I mean, I recall my own memory here of 1999, I think it was. I was leaving graduate school and I had this opportunity to go to Prague for the quadrennial, the design quadrennial, which is, for those that don't know, it's like the Olympics of stage design. And it was such a humbling experience to see, smaller, much smaller countries, maybe not as well resourced countries, just kick our ass when it came to
Yeah. Oh,
drama,
yeah.
and I'm
Yeah.
like, I had no idea that this, that Estonia has got these amazing designers, and so it was really eye-opening for me. And like you, I found I was there, I think about 10 days, and I saw not only nine pieces, theater pieces in those 10 days,
Mhm.
but every one of them was different. One was marionette theater, one was blacklight theater, one was an opera I saw for $3. I saw a production of Tosca for $3.
You
And I
can't beat
just,
that.
oh my gosh, it was such a part of the fabric of that culture that I began to sort of envy in this case, it was like something to do. Oh, people walking down the street, maybe in this country would be like, have you seen, whatever band is playing? Here it was like, have you seen that, most recent production of fill in the blank theater show
Of
Tosca?
Tosca. Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
But I was mind blowing, and I had a hostel for $8 a night, and I met people from all over the world. It was quite, for me, it was very formative. Like it sounds like these excursions were for you.
Very formative. And they continue to inform my work, that global perspective of how the art form can be understood, especially outside the US, is something I continue to be inspired by.
Nice, nice. So let's fast forward to your fourth year. You have your history degree and theater and Italian minors in your back pocket. What was next for you?
So I didn't really have a plan. My roommate at the time was moving to Los Angeles, and I'd always wanted to work in film. And as a kid, I was just always enamored of that experience of sitting in a movie theater. And I thought, look, now's the time to do it. I moved out to LA with him, didn't really have a job, but called everyone I knew, which included a WashU alum, a
Nice.
guy named Josh Einson, who is now a casting director for one of the biggest casting directors on both coasts. And I said, Josh, I'm looking for something. Do you have anything? And he was working as a PA on the film Contact with Jodie
Hmm.
Foster and Matthew McConaughey. And he said, well, look, they just got back from a shoot in DC. They need someone to unload the costume truck. Can you do that? I was like, sure, great. I said yes. And I spent the entire day kind of sorting uniforms. And come to find out, a week later, someone in the production office got another job. And the production coordinator called over to the costume department and say, that guy, Jeff, how did he do? And they're like, he did great. And they're like, great, he's hired. And so then the next day, I got hired to be, yeah, to be a production assistant on Contact. And it was an extraordinary experience. It was almost everything I had always dreamed of. I was surrounded by, you name it. I met that celebrity. I did that for a little bit, and I worked on the film Deep Impact in their
Hmm.
pre-production phase. And then I got a call from someone that worked on Contact, and they said, look, Zemeckis is looking for someone to work in his office as one of his assistants. Would you be up for that? And I
Wow.
said, sure. And so I started working for him. And there's two things I take away from that experience. One is at the time, Zemeckis was the peak of Hollywood directors. He had just won the Oscar for Forrest Gump. Contact hadn't yet come out, but there was a huge amount of anticipation. McConaughey had just done A Time to Kill.
Yep.
So it was pretty much, I got a window seat to the apex of Hollywood. Um,
Incredible.
yeah, Hollywood fame is not really the right word, but just a Hollywood experience. But I learned really quickly two things. One, Zemeckis was probably the nicest guy you will ever meet, and I probably wouldn't work for someone that nice again. And that the rest of the industry, the LA, this thing that I thought I always wanted to do, didn't feel right. And now,
Hmm.
with the benefit of hindsight, that was a time when everyone wanted to work for Miramax, for
Yeah.
example.
Yeah.
There wasn't the same kind of conversation about what was appropriate and what was inappropriate. There was just kind of an underbelly that didn't feel right. And I just knew, even if I left Zemeckis, I was never going to be able to find someone who was that talented and also that kind and generous a
Hmm.
person. And so I kind of began to question this move that I did to LA. I backpacked through Europe. I bummed around for a little bit. I went to New York. And then, as you heard in the previous podcast, Sanjay De Silva and I met up at a bar, and he had been working for Spike Lee on Summer
Oh,
of Sam. So we both had had these experiences, these windows into Hollywood film, and it just wasn't right.
hmm.
And he said, "You know what? What's missing?" And he and I had been in A Servant of Two Masters together, which was the play we did my senior year. Corey Jones was in that show.
Wow. Yeah.
Danny Sher, the late great Danny Sher, was in
Yeah.
that show. And we thought, I think we miss acting. I think we miss storytelling. I think we miss the theater.
Hmm.
And so I packed my stuff in FLA, moved to New York. Sanjay and I were roommates, and then kind of started that path together.
Amazing. Wow. It's so nice to hear. I sometimes I'm asked by students, particularly prospective students, about WashU and specifically the students at WashU. And I think this is true, although I've never myself been a student here. And that is, I always go back to this old saying about a high tide rises all boats, and that students honestly are not, I don't want to say they're not competitive, but I think they also celebrate each other when good things happen, and they also commiserate when bad things happen. And so it's so wonderful to hear that even post graduation your safety net of people is still there. And you've mentioned so many alums. Many of them have been on the podcast already. I can't believe I've been doing this that long. But these are stories I've heard from different perspectives, and it's so nice to know that there's that network out there. I mean, if there's going to
Yeah.
be a Yale mafia, there should be a WashU mafia.
Well, there is. And what's remarkable is I look back, and for a school like WashU that isn't a conservatory, there have been a remarkable number of successes. And I would just add, I don't think there was competition. Everyone was driven to succeed and to
Yeah.
do really good work. And along the way, we all were cheerleaders for each other. Like when Peter Sarsgaard started to break out, everyone was super supportive of that. Michael Holmes, who founded Pot Roast, was on Broadway. In Oklahoma, we all went to go see that. When Sanjit was
Oh,
in Warhorse, everybody went to go see that. So
amazing.
it isn't a zero-sum game, meaning if one person succeeds, the others can't.
Right.
It's when one person succeeds, we're all there to cheer them on and to celebrate the success.
Ah, that's so nice to hear. It really, really is. I mean, particularly in this world at this time, it's nice to hear that there's that collective of humans who empathize with each other and can be there when you stumble and also celebrate you when you're on stage in Warhorse, for example.
Yes, yes,
Shout out to
exactly.
Sanjit.
Yes.
um, so what was next for you? Are you still based in New York ever since then?
No, so I started to do so Sanjit went to NYU's grad acting program, and then I ended up studying at this place called the Actor Center, which actually Anna connected me to.
Oh,
They had
nice.
a teacher training program that she had done, but then they also had a year-long conservatory.
Hmm.
So I did that. I worked regionally for quite some time. I did the Fantastics in Maine. I did Richard III in New Jersey.
Wow.
But I started to find my way to more interactive and experimental theater. So I would do these productions of like we'd take Twelfth Night and we'd put them in the village,
Hmm.
and and you would get a email with a location that you would have to show up to, and then each of us were in different locations, and we had a script where we'd kind of all come together at a certain point, and it was based on the High Line, and we would go to the Standard Hotel. And so I got involved in this more, yeah, interactive is the
I love
best
it.
way for me to describe it. I had done some work with Balinese masks and Michael Chekhov work, which I found to be hugely inspiring, none of which I'm describing paid any bills. So
Uh, Fair.
I started to try to explore ways that you could apply theater in a non-performance setting, specifically corporate or academic settings. And I got connected to this company that did DEI training. And it was started by a woman who had a background in HR and was trying to do these trainings and wasn't getting any traction, found a way to incorporate theater, and then all of a sudden her work took off.
Hmm.
And that's what I started to do. Pun, who you also interviewed, Pun was part of the same
Yes.
company for a bit. So he and
Nice.
I worked together. And that is really kind of what led me on this path to explore how can you take theater out of a performance setting and do things, whether it's leadership development training, whether it's educational, whether it's social justice and advocacy, using theater as the tool to explore those things.
I love that. I love that. For a little bit of my own history with a similar kind of thing, COCA, which is actually right from where I'm sitting, right over there, the Center of Creative Arts has a wing. The smallest of the sort of three-pronged wing is COCA Biz, and for some years, I don't do it much anymore. I was what was I called? A teaching artist, and I
Mhm.
was paraded in front of companies, Centene, local companies like that, Wells Fargo, Monsanto, which is now Bayer, and we would do like these sessions where in a single day there'd be someone a writer named Susan Grigsby who would talk to people about writing and conveying a story through writing, and then someone I would think in a similar role as you, a guy named Ed Reggie, would stand before folks and talk about being present and in the moment and comfortable in front of a group. And then I was the caboose of the day, and I taught people about color psychology and visual storytelling, and right down to slides, being sort of less text heavy and more visual heavy, and that's what you remember. The sort of picture superiority. I can never say superiority very well. I can't
Yes.
even say it now. Picture superiority effect. But anyway, I mean, it sounds like this work you're doing, I think, is an interesting for our students to know branch of your training that
Yes.
teaches leaders how to be leaders. Is that fair to say?
Yes, and what the way the structure of the work we would do, and I'll just side note, it was interesting to hear Anna Pileggi talk about her Theater for Social Change
Oh,
class that
yes.
obviously happened after I left.
Right.
But those principles, the theater of the living, theater of the oppressed, are very much incorporated to the work that I do. We don't call it that because if we were to walk in a corporate setting and say, hey, we're going to do theater of the oppressed work, we're going to do forum theater, they would probably run screaming. But the structure of the work we did is we would develop scenes based on learning points that the client would identify. And usually they were around issues about inclusion and working with people who have a background different from your own.
Hmm.
And so we would craft these scenes. This is where my history degree comes in. I would do the research and then I would write the scenes. And one would be based on gender, one would be based on language and culture, another on race, another on LGBTQ plus related issues, and then
Yeah.
just how to work better. We would do a scene and then we would interact with the audience in character. And I like to say I
Ah.
got my start playing the naive knucklehead white guy. And I was very, very good at it, I will just say. um, but
It's your
eventually,
Harlequin character. It's
absolutely. It's my servant of two masters character right back. But it ended up working really well. And the best part about it is we would travel all around the world and we would find actors in the locations we were working that
oh.
reflected the identity of the participants we'd be doing the program for. So we'd go to India and we would find four actors from there. There'd be two of us from either the UK or the US, do these scenes, interact, and then move on to the next location.
Oh.
And that is where you will see all the strands from WashU come together, right?
Hmm.
The Mama's Pot Roast is the improv, the history is the research, my Italian minor. I would love to say I conducted a session in Italian, but it is not true.
But you could
But
have.
but I could have, but that idea of you're immersing yourself in a culture and approaching it with humility and really listening and saying, well, what are the issues that folks in this room want to talk about? And
Hmm.
I wouldn't have had that skill if I hadn't had the humbling experience of traveling to Italy after only 1 year of Italian 101.
I love this. It's sort of like an embodied experience of sorts. There's a famous lecture called the Last Lecture done by a Carnegie Mellon professor. He was diagnosed with cancer, and it literally was his last lecture, and it was very well attended. And he it's a still you can still watch it online. But I remember the one thing I recall from that lecture that I've tried to incorporate in my own teaching, and that is that there's this thing that he calls the head fake style of teaching. And it is when you get a student involved in an exercise and you trick them into learning something, if that makes sense, by doing it, And so this creativity class is very much a kind of a yin and a yang of both, not just study of things like failure and play and divergent thinking, but it's also getting them to do it, and actually practice it. And so it sounds that Reify is a very kind of similar approach.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you talk about embodied learning, that is the only way you can practice working with people who are different from you. A
Sure.
lot of the work we did as a US-based company, not understanding the cultural norms of the team in a different country. And
Yeah.
how do you create space for leaders to learn how to do that in a way that is not just a lecture, right? In a way that is embodied. And that's where all of these theater techniques that probably Anna talked about in her class
Yeah.
that I continue to study, that's where these come in handy.
Nice. Nice. And these groups don't all know who Boal is.
Nobody knows who Boyle or Paulo Freire or any of these other folks. No,
Fair.
that's not on
So
their
the
new
percentage is
hire
low,
orientation.
those that
Very low, very, very low.
I think this is so fascinating to also, I guess, quote myself. I stole from a designer. I'm going to admit that I steal from designers, as designers often do. A wonderful designer, Bruce Mao, in his approach, he talks about making hope visible, and that's what I've applied to teaching, making hope visible for students. So I appreciate the fact that through this dialogue, you're helping our students make hope visible for a career that they maybe had never even thought of before,
Yeah, yeah.
in this type of work. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, I think there's this misconception. I see myself as being guilty of this, which is if you graduate with a degree in theater, you're going to be an actor, writer, director, or designer.
Right.
And the reality is you are learning skills. You have a superpower if you graduate with a degree in theater. And that superpower is you understand the importance of storytelling and you understand how storytelling can change people. And no matter what you do, even if your income isn't from being in a play, you have this skill that you can apply to any profession.
I love that. I was going to snap, as my students often do, but that's bad for podcasting.
It is. My daughters taught me this. Do you know what this is? Where you go,
Oh,
you
yes.
just yeah, slay. You do that. Yeah,
I
exactly.
yes, I also know this, which this is an audio podcast. This does no good at all, but it's when you put your two fingers together. I think isn't that the smallest violin
That's the
playing my
smallest violin.
heart
And
beats?
what I was
Like,
doing before is tapping my index finger to my thumb and as a mini clap, and
nice.
that's what I was doing.
But you're absolutely right that that is what I try to convey to students is it's even if you just dip a baby toe into the work we do in this department, you learn so much about yourself that you don't think is applicable later in life, but it absolutely is.
Yeah.
So-
And I lived in the this we did not cover this, but I'll just insert that I lived in the UK for a couple of years. I was
mhm.
the other thing students should probably know is
Yeah.
your life path sometimes depends on your life partner.
Mm.
And my wife got a job in Belfast, Northern Ireland. I traveled over there with her and our children. I continued to do the work, the diversity training work that I talked about, but I also learned something about how theater is understood. We talked about it briefly at the beginning of our conversation, how theater is understood, that theater isn't just something you do, it's not connected to your job necessarily. It is part of your life. And I
Mm.
think I always thought if you're going to do theater or you're going to be an artist, you had to earn income from that. And actually, being an artist, being a theater maker is a way of experiencing the world that can apply to any profession.
Ah, yes, yes. Thank you. I preach. I mean, this is just great wisdom. I want to make sure that, as you said before, there's only 4 listeners to the podcast, 5 if you include yourself there.
Yes, yes, and me, yes.
Hopefully, the students hear this and learn from this. So, would you like to kind of talk about where you are now and what you're doing at the present time?
Yeah, so Reify, the company I was working for, was focused on DEI. And then, as we all know, that all of a sudden went away.
Yeah.
And I was faced with this crossroad of saying, am I going to go into the training and development, more the organizational psychology route, or am I going to lean into this idea of exploring how theater can be applied outside of a performance setting? So I was in New York for a number of years, lived in Belfast, Northern Ireland for a couple of years, and then moved to Boston, which is where I'm based now.
Got it.
And Emerson College has an MFA program in applied theater. And it's one of only a few. There's one, UT Austin has one,
Yeah.
NYU, yeah, hook 'em horns. Um, NYU has one, CUNY has one, and then Emerson has one.
Hmm.
And I decided to take this pause in the DEI training industry and lean into this idea of theater outside of a performance setting. And so
Mm.
it's a going to try to get it done in 2 years. We'll see. It might take me three.
Yeah.
But what's been amazing about it is I'm now getting exposed to all of the scholarship that supports why this way of learning works. I always
Ah,
knew
yes.
based on my experience in the room. You know this, Rob, probably in the lectures you're doing. You can tell when students are engaged, when those light bulb moments go off.
Yeah, yeah.
But I didn't really understand the scholarship behind it. And now I do, and that's the foundation. So I'm steeped in Boal, Paulo Freire, all of those great thinkers, and using this as a way to say, okay, what can I do with all these tools? And so that's where I am in my journey. Who
I love
knows where
it.
it's going to go?
I love it. It seems to me that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm now sort of hearkening back to you and Sanjit in LA. And even though maybe on paper, you're a great success working for Zemeckis, for example, and so Sanjit working on Summer of Sam, and I feel like you both were in tune, what I would call the call of your calling, that you understood yourself enough to sort of, in a sense, take a left turn and go the direction that your heart, whatever you want to call it, your gut is telling you to do. And it seems like that you're now at an inflection point of your life where you also listening to that. Would you? And I want to sort of applaud the fact that people who are again listening to the call of their calling, they know when to make a turn when it doesn't seem on paper that's what you should do.
Yeah, I think you've described it perfectly. I think, and sometimes there's also a sense of based on age, you think that at some point that that's settled.
Yeah.
And what I've learned is that that never is really settled. The journey is never complete. You are going to experience these moments of inflection where you can turn left, you can turn right. And the folks that I know that are still living in that creative space are the ones who take the time to reflect, to listen, to do that gut check and say, what feels right? Or what questions do I have? Or what do I want to know more about? And that be something that guides their career choices too.
Ah, I love that. And I would think, and again, I'm propping up specifically people in your area, but I think actors are, when you talk about empathy and you talk about what it means to be empathetic, placing yourself in someone else's shoes, I don't know anyone better than actors at doing that and understanding, enough about yourself that you can place yourself in another pair of shoes. So,
Yeah, there's a humility
yeah,
to that too. When
yeah,
you're playing a
right.
character, you have to go with the story as the playwright has laid out.
Yeah,
You can't say, well, actually, I don't feel this here, and I would rather say these words. No, you have to give
yeah,
yourself over to that. And certainly, I think there's an analogy to giving yourself over to the call of that you're hearing about where your path is going to lead.
I
I
love
do
that.
want to also just say that it does help to have a supportive life partner. My wife is also an actor, and so she and I both understand that there are times when you need to pivot and
Yeah,
also make sure that you fulfill your family responsibilities. And
of
so
course.
I would say the best advice I actually ever got from an actor um, was don't forget to have a life as you're following the siren call. So if you want to have children, have children. If you want to live in a different country, do all that.
Nice.
That actually will help you on your career path towards creativity.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I had a student write me not long ago saying she couldn't make it to class, the creativity class specifically. We were having a comedian come in and talk about failure and bombing on stage and, getting back up and figuring out how to do that over and over again. And she was looking at her, I want to say, checklist of exams she was doing and things like that. And she wrote me saying, I'm sorry I can't make it to class. I've got two exams in the next 3 days and this and that and this and that. And I'm like, I wrote back and I said, your email uh, said thank you for your understanding, but I don't understand, to be honest. I don't I think that your coming to this specific guest will teach you how to deal with the failure, God forbid, of an exam that you're taking. And so I just have to kind of reflect back sometimes to students that while it may seem any kind of involvement, whether it be a class in creativity or on Boal or whatever, might seem like a dalliance, but it's really not. It's building yourself as a human being piece by piece.
Yeah. And I
Yeah,
don't know anybody. I mean, you've interviewed on the podcast some folks that have had great success. None of them was it without some degree of failure along the
absolutely.
way.
Yeah,
And I will also say, even if you don't go into a creative career, everybody I know has also experienced some degree of failure along the way.
Yeah.
So the lessons that they learn in your class about failure really can apply to any path that you take.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. That's important for, sometimes when you're a parent, you kind of tell your kids a certain thing and then they don't really listen until somebody else says the same thing. So I appreciate you're kind of taking on the role of that guest who's, essentially echoing what I say in class all the time. But
Yeah.
this has been so delightful to get to know you and chat with you about. Is there anything else that we should chat about? I find we've covered a lot.
Yeah, no, I mean, I guess the only thing that I would say is theater people and storytellers can change the world. That's my
Yes.
only plug, especially in a time. I just gave a talk to one of my classes that I'm working with in Emerson, and it's imagination is a portal to change. And when we are living in a battle for imagination, like we are now,
Mm,
when it comes to that portal, let's have artists lead the way through that portal
yes,
of imagination. So that's my only
absolutely.
plug.
Thank you so much for your wisdom. It really, really means a lot. Thanks for your time as well. I wasn't even aware you had kids in your life as well. I know that can take a lot of your time. So thanks for just paying it forward to students like yourself that are walking these halls and doing shows. Mama's Pot Roast is alive and well, and all these AST is here. They're doing a show they just got an invite to today.
Yeah, that's
So
great.
they're like, if you can, come to the invited dress, because then we don't have to buy, you don't have to
Right, right,
like,
right. Take up a paying seat.
you don't have to be a ticketed patron.
Right. Oh, there
Um,
is one other thing. Do we have just
please,
another?
yeah.
So, I was looking back, and what I want to just put in a plug for is I had experiences at WashU outside the PAD
Uh-huh.
that laid the groundwork for theater outside of a performance setting. So, we used to do this thing called Choices 101 that was part of the freshman orientation.
Okay.
Again, it was a series of scenes that were created in partnership with Residential Life that were part of the freshman orientation. Again, theater to help with that transition from high school to college.
Hmm.
And at the time I was there was an associate dean of students, a woman named Karen Coburn, who wrote this book called Letting Go.
Hmm.
And as part of the freshman orientation, again, she would do a program for the parents. And instead of just reading from the book, she had me and another student, a woman named Lisa Lewin, who, by the way, went to Harvard Business School and is now a CEO. Um, we came up with three one sided phone calls that represented different points
Uh,
throughout the year. And I was an RA at the time as well. And every single parent who saw that talk came up to me on our freshman floor and said, that changed my life. I feel so much better. So even back then, Choices 101, letting go, understanding how theater can help with students transitioning from high school to college, and more importantly, how parents, and as
yes.
a parent myself, someone who has children going off to college, I could almost go back to that video I have of letting go and think, I could learn a lot from that as a parent now.
Take
So
advice from your 18-year-old self.
take advice. Yes, exactly. So that was the only other thing that I
Oh,
just wanted to lift up that
uh,
that was all still very present when I was there.
absolutely. Absolutely. I used to run a program here called Beyond Boundaries, and I can't tell you how many crying parents I used to hug in the residence hall parking structure because this was a huge step for them in addition
Yeah.
to of course, for their child. And I mean, I looked them in the eyes and I tried to empathize, and yet I knew that this was a chapter they were going to have to kind of work through. If they had no other kids, just sort of maybe some house plants and some pets back home, that was pretty much all they had to take care of.
Yeah.
But thank you, Jeff, for your time and for your wisdom. I think this has been truly, truly helpful. Will be helpful for our students to hear. So yeah, hopefully we'll have more than 5 listeners of this
Maybe six. I think
podcast.
I think I
Maybe
can pull a
6.
couple of other alums in
Yeah, I'm
to
crossing
listen
my
to it.
fingers for half a dozen.
I think you're almost there. You're almost there. You're almost there. No, but it's been a pleasure to talk with you. And as a listener, as number five listener,
Yes.
to be able to hear the stories, some of which I knew, some of which I didn't know, of my friends from that time has been really inspiring and just speaks to what you're talking about. It really is a community of people who continue to support each other and celebrate each other's success. And so I'm grateful that there's the PAD podcast for that.
Oh, well, thank you for that. I appreciate that. I'm very humbled.
And thank you again for your patience and your encouragement. And
My
this has been great.
pleasure.
I really enjoyed the conversation. And I just also think that what you're doing in terms of lifting up creativity and performing arts department path has real value. Anything I can do to support that message.
Okay, my many, many thanks to Jeff Pagliano for joining the PAD podcast. Episode 30, we've kind of crossed over that threshold. Next guest, episode 31, for the month of September, will be the very special episode I have planned for Henry Schvey. You'll hear from Henry Schvey, 30-plus year veteran of the Performing Arts Department. So listen for that. Henry Schvey will be next month's guest on the PAD podcast. Thank you so much for listening.